After a stopover in Old England, our series returns to New England, here in upstate New York. Watkins Glen almost always provides incredible racing, and with lower-powered cars such as these GT4s, the draft battles can be thrilling. The addition of the BMW to this series could change up the dynamic completely though, so all eyes are watching to see who has the advantage at the Glen. We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 2 of the PRL GT4 Clubsport series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Peter Mackay. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Watkins Glen International has hosted just about every major racing series to visit North America. To get a better look at this popular venue, let's head down to our track guide. Welcome to Watkins Glen International. Situated in upstate New York, just south of the Finger Lakes, this track has seen it all. Few road circuits can boast hosting Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, and IMSA during its history. Though it did have a brief fallow period in the early 80s, thanks to the investment of local companies, it's grown into one of the premier road tracks in the U.S. With 4 layouts to choose from that range between 2.5 and 3.5 miles in length, lap times can vary greatly. But it also means it's suitable for lots of different levels of racing, from amateur to pro. The one thing that stays consistent no matter which car and which layout you're using is that Watkins Glen means speed. Many of the straights are very long, and the majority of the corners are fast sweepers. Some of them include a surprising amount of banking as well. Combine that with the proximity of the barriers, and this historic circuit retains a very old-school feel. Drivers in lesser-powered cars can expect drafting battles, while higher-powered machinery will test the skill and bravery of their pilots. Some of the turns are visually iconic, such as the carousel and the S's. Others, like the inner loop, the chute, and turn 9, greatly challenge even the expertly skilled. And of course, we haven't even mentioned the drastic amount of elevation change drivers experience. Between its rich history and popularity among drivers, this track stays busy and seems likely to be that way for a long, long time. There you see a little bit about Watkins Glen International, but they have different layouts that are raced here. So Peter, why don't you bring us up to speed on what they're racing today?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Joe, on GSRC for this race here at Watkins Glen. Today we are using the boot layout, which is the full layout, which the boot section, which is basically the part on the bottom right of that track map there, which was introduced in 1971. We're also going to use the bus stop chicane at the end of the back straight, which was introduced in 1975 to slow down the ever-increasing speeds in Formula One. And of course, Watkins Glen has a fantastic history with the Formula One World Championship and really became a fall tradition in the calendar. 3.4 miles, 12 turns, and lots of time on full throttle. So as you said earlier, the drafting is going to be really important with these mildly underpowered GT4 cars.
And as a reminder, the GT4 Clubsport series is brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. Today's broadcast is also brought to you by SimRacing Canada. Pay less, get more with SimRacing Canada's custom aluminum rig build for the starters to the pros. Your vision, our solution. Find out more at SimRacingCanada.com. Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. Now, let's take a look at the championship because we are actually on round 2 here, so we have some numbers on the board. Stogbauer is currently leading the way, but narrowly over Moises Caraballo, who jumps in from the GTE racing from many seasons ago now to slightly slower cars, but certainly seems just as fast. Avatal back there in third with Palacio. finishing just off the podium last round. Jorge Flores also coming over from those GTE machines, rounding out your top 5. Now we have a team's championship as well. Peter, why don't you run us through on that?
So for our team championships, leading the way right now is the SRT eSport Green team with 62 points. In second is the SRT eSport Blue team and with 10 points down, 52 points total. In third place is the SRM Green team, 22 points back of the leader. Fourth is the NinjaTrader team from our wonderful sponsor, NinjaTrader.com. They are 23 points back. And fifth is the SRM Blue team, who are 39 points back.
Now, in case we have viewers who haven't tuned into one of the PRL series before, especially their GT series that they run, let's give you how Monday will go this Monday evening. We are in round 2, as we mentioned, and they have 2 different cars now, new from last season. They've introduced the BMW M4 now to this series, and as I mentioned in the intro, that could make a difference in how they handle from track to track. It's a 45-minute race, though, and even though it is open setup, they've limited the fuel cells compared to the real cars, so they will have to come in for a stop for fuel. They do have some penalties, a drive-through at 16 incidents, and then they will be disqualified at 24 incidents. So definitely got to keep it on track. And there's some places where you can rack those up if you go a little bit wide. And then some bonus points there at the bottom, which can play into the championship depending on how close things stay as the season goes on. Right now, they are in qualifying, and up at the top, Stogbauer picked up where he left off last round at Brands Hatch. He is currently on the provisional pole, and by over 2/10 here, Peter. It looks like Raymond Day, who is actually in a Porsche, has got a little bit of work to do.
Yep, he's currently sitting just over 0.2 of a second behind, but very hot pace at the front so far, already underneath the 1 minute 57 second barrier. Now, just to touch on our BMW versus Porsche battle, of course, 2 great German performance brands. There's probably a slightly bigger balance of the new BMW M4 in the field today, perhaps new toy syndrome. But the car on pole right now, the 327 of Stogbauer, he is in a BMW M4, but the next 3 after him are Porsches.
Oh, and it looks like Avital just took second away from Raymond Day, so he is now up at the top. Well, not the top of the charts, but on the front row, I should say. Stogbauer is going to head into the pits, probably getting some fresher tires and getting back out there. And Prota yet to set a time. Looks like he's going to try and come across and get one on the board with the 7.5 minutes left to go. And unfortunately, he had an off track as that one did not count. So he will not get a position quite yet. Of our top 5 points drivers, Jorge Flores seems to be struggling a bit because of his first 2 timed laps. He's only managed to get a 57.9 here, Peter. He's still only 10th.
Yeah, this is a really fascinating format for qualifying. I personally really like it. I think it really adds a nice element to it, especially for our TV broadcast, because this is a group qualifying session where everyone has to get out on track and set a time, whereas probably the predominant method for qualifying is the drivers get the whole track to themselves and they get maybe 2 or 3 laps to set their time. But the biggest thing in the group qualifying session is, of course, the draft. And what we mean by draft is that basically the car in front of you can effectively punch a big hole in the air for you to lower the air resistance on your car and therefore increase speed. Also, if the car in front of you is slightly faster, you can benefit from following their line as well. So it's a double benefit. However, if you are the car in front and you see a car who's perhaps a threat behind you, you're then in the position where you go, well, do I back off? Do I put them off? Do I just tow them along anyway? That is the extra dimensions that this form of qualifying brings in, as James David in the number 89 car sets a 1 minute 56.5. That is flying.
Oof, it absolutely is. And he was our champion from last season, by the way. So James David coming back to try and take another crown, and he's going to make Michael Stogbauer work for things. Ted Lowendick improves to 10th, up from 12th. So nice. Actually, it looks like 3/10 knocked off of his time on that last time by. As Avital, who has since been removed from that front row, not able to go quicker. He's still getting the tires warmed up and is now on a flyer in that number 23. Oof, having to weave back onto the track, though, after taking to the runoff in turn 1.
Yeah, ran just a little bit wide into turn 1. Now, it's quite funny. We've got to the point in the world now where we're saying that over 400 horsepower is underpowered, but in relative terms, it is. These GT4 cars are much more based on the road car machine than, I'd say, a GT3 car is, for example. So both of these cars make use of their original factory street gearbox. So the Porsche is a 6-speed PDK, as they call it, and the BMW is a 7-speed dual clutch system. Similar idea, just one more speed in the box. But actually some of the other bits on these cars are really, really sophisticated. For example, the BMW has the same brakes that the M6 GT3 cars uses. So it's a smaller car with less power, but has immense stopping power.
Could come in handy in some of these slower corners, especially at the end of the backstretch, coming into the inner loop, I imagine, as we watch James David. Like he's being a little held up here, so this is not going to help him. Who's that he's with? That's Brian Hotham. And that lap for David actually was helping him, so a 56.4, in fact, nearly a tenth faster that time by Diego Morales as well. Boy, things changing around very, very quickly here in qualifying. So front row really changing face. And we should point out, Peter, that the weather here is not looking ideal. It is quite toasty on the track surface.
Oh yes, 116 degrees Fahrenheit. That is very, very hot, and that's going to make it really difficult for these Michelin tires to bite into the tarmac. So you'll see the cars just washing out slightly, a little bit of slides, and actually we come back to the horsepower of these cars. These cars they don't have a massive amount of aerodynamics and not a huge amount of power either. So carrying that momentum, you can't afford to make a mistake. You've got to have the car inch perfect all the time to be able to carry the maximum amount of corner speed and keep the momentum up, because you just don't have the horsepower to make up for it on the straight or the aerodynamics to make up for it in the corners. And of course, with a high track temperature, that is really going to make a difference. Now, 45 minutes, that is no problem at all for these cars on fuel, but the fuel tank has been reduced, so that which basically forces our drivers to take a pit stop. But tyres, getting to the end of that 45-minute period with a track temperature like this, I think they'll be well past their best by that point.
It makes you wonder who is going to take them when they come to the stop. And will it help out enough as we watch Simon Avital come down to the line? Looks like he is on a slow lap. I think he might be on an out lap here as he comes to start another one. 2.5 minutes left to go. And Proda still looking for a time since we last looked. And we skipped away there. Sebastian Prue into 6th. And as he comes to the line, it looks like a 2:09.3 is an out lap for him as well. 57.2 will stand. It's still on the third row. Stogbauer now heading down at 57.2. Also not an improvement on his quickest time. Still trying to get back up to pole.
Yeah, and if you look at the times, the top 5 spread by just half a second, and that is, you can make up that difference in the draft. So it looks like when we come to the race, as long as they get through turn 1 cleanly at a corner called the 90, it could be that the draft train gets pretty long to begin with in this race. Another thing that might make a difference as well, Joe, with that track temperature being so high, is the way that these cars deliver their power. The Porsche has a normally aspirated 3.8 litre motor that's right in the middle of the car, but crucially normally aspirated, so perhaps a little bit more linear with its power, a bit more of its power kind of spread across the power band. The BMW is quite different. It's a 3 litre, so a smaller motor, same amount of cylinders, 6 cylinders, but it's twin turbocharged, so the power is much more aggressive and much more kind of spiky, I suppose. So the BMW drivers might find it a little bit trickier to manage the power when they get towards the end of the race, or certainly the application of the power.
So we watch Raymond Day on screen. That last lap still a little bit shy by about 0.3 of his quickest time. Avital around for another one, trying to get higher than this second row. He was all the way up to second place at one point, and that's not going to do it. In fact, he's hundredths off of his quickest time there. And Prota still working on his time on the board, and poor Rodrigo has had 4 laps that have not counted. Prue down and across still stays in 6th, and as he pulls to a halt, that's going to be it for his qualifying, because we're down to the final 5 seconds or so. Let's see who's going to get the checkered flag, because I think the next car across will do it, and it looks like it's going to be Stacy Hunter here, the Texan, currently sitting 34th, well down the field here of what is a pretty packed field, we should say. It is a long lap, but there's going to be a lot of cars out there. He does not improve, sadly. JR Hoops in 23rd, a 58.8 stays put. Same thing with Palacio, 57.2, only good enough for 7th for him, but still he is nicely up the order. Byron Daly, a 58.5 is a quicker lap for him, and that puts him up to 18th.
So it looks like it's going to be 2 Porsches on the front row. The trusty Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 will lock out the front row with a BMW in 3rd.
Looks like it's a fast car here today, because top 5, there are 4 Porsches and 1 BMW. Mark Feil, the next one down and across, also in a Bimmer. He sits in 23rd. Pennsylvania driver comes to the line. A 58.7 is his fastest. And now it's a 57.9, so up to 14th. Nice last-ditch effort from him. We head to Richards as he comes around the penultimate turn in his number 49. He sits in 15th. His 5th lap was his fastest. He's had about 4 of his 6 laps count. Let's see if this one was clean. He seems to think so, because he's going to continue down, but it's not faster, unfortunately, so he'll stay 15th.
Yeah, the pace very, very impressive at the front. 56.482 is a very quick lap in one of these cars at Watkins Glen. And of course, if you remember, Joe, with the Dorian Mansilla putting together a fantastic drive in the IMSA iRacing Challenge to overcome all the BMWs and win in his Porsche a couple of weeks ago.
That's a good point. As we watch Sean Foes have a few problems here on this lap. He got awful close to the barrier. Padavani, we saw his off track, so he's abandoned his lap. I believe Foes is our last one. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to count this lap if I saw him go that far off into the grass, but he's going to finish it anyways, I guess, for pride. Indeed, that was an on lap for him. So our grid is set, and boy, there's a lot of them to get through, so let's start through that grid order here for round 2 in the PRL GT4 Clubsport Series. James David on the pole once again. That's one of those bonus points. Diego Morales will be starting next to him with Michael Stogbauer, winner of the first round, in P3 here today. Does he have the race pace to try and challenge these Porsches? Simon Avital will be starting in 4th with Raymond Day in the 5th position. Sebastian Prue, he starts P6. You've got Julio Palacio on the inside of row 4 in 7th. Jorge Flores managed to put it into 8th with Arnaud Genest in 9th position. Jean-Marc Tremblay rounds out your top 10.
Starting in 11th will be the 969 of Kenny Rodriguez with Piotr Margula beside him on row 6. On row 7 and 13th will be Ted Londick and Mark Feil in 14th beside him. Row 8th will be Christopher Richards in the number 49 car with Carlos Passos in 16th. Row 9 will be David Cristelli and Philippe Magnan. On row 10 will be Byron Daly and James Nunn.
21st will go to Brett Barrett. Then you got Brian Hotham starting 22nd. Behind them in 23rd, it'll be Louis Zambelli. JR Hoops starts P24. Rodrigo Improta, he did get a lap in finally at the very end, and that's good enough for 25th. John Cochran will be starting 26th, followed by Karsten Quint in 27th. Aaron Law starts P28 today. Spencer Simkovich, 29th. Top 30 going to be rounded out by Gary Schilling.
In row 16 will be John Navarra and Frank Kroijmans. Row 17 will be Matt Odell and Matteo Bellavance. In row 18 will be Stacey Hunter and Jefferson Padovani. Row 19 will be Glenn Bowen and Danny Duchesne. And row 20 will be Brian Matthews and Sean Foes.
Oof, Padovani's got his work cut out for him. Just a single lap, and it was way off the pace. So not sure what was plaguing him here in the qualifying, a lack of practice or what, because usually he is a much higher front runner. So you see the grid now lined up down the front stretch. We're going to get going racing for 45 minutes here today for round 2 of the PRL GT4 Clubsport Series. You mentioned the run down into the 90, Peter, and I know you like your trivia. Did you know, actually, that the 90 used to be the final corner on this track before it was changed back in the early 70s?
So it used to run in the other direction then? I did not know that, Joe.
No, it ran in the same direction. The front stretch just was on that short little straight. Before they added
I see.
Before they added the boot.
You've trumped me tonight with fun facts.
There we go. I see, and here I thought you already knew that one. I was like, oh, surely he's always got a million facts on me. But actually,
no. I could tell you though that did you know that it was a law student, Cameron Argetsinger, who began road racing and kind of came up with the idea of the circuit back in 1948.
Surprised a person involved in law came up with that idea.
They're normally not any fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry for any lawyers listening.
Maybe he just had a lot of money and probably had the a bit to get himself a nice little car and needed a reason to run it around. So meanwhile, we have a lot of drivers who can run our virtual machines around here and add to the history of this course. We come up to the backstretch, and this is where I mentioned the braking that you were talking about, Peter, into this inner loop. I wonder if those BMWs, if they can get close to the Porsches, this is where they'll maybe see lots of attacks.
Yeah, the BMW this is the cool thing about GT4. Of course, we've only got 2 of the many different configurations of GT4 cars. You know, you can have a Mustang with the most amazing sounding V8 in it. You can have a Camaro, a McLaren, an Audi, you name it. There's virtually a GT4 version of it. But the cool thing is that they are balanced out. They're basically balanced out with something called balance of performance. So the Cayman the Porsche has the engine in the middle, but the BMW has it in the front. And I think to come to your point on the braking, Joe, having the engine in the front will certainly make that a little bit more predictable coming through the bus stop, I would wager. But if you can control the Porsche, it's maybe that fraction more agile. So it's going to be fascinating to see this race unfold with these now 2 different types of car in this GT4 field.
I've seen the different makes go at it, especially over the course of the season. Who has the strength where? They now are in the boot portion of the track. And here's a place where that momentum you were talking about is going to be important. Out of the toe. That is, I feel like this is one of the more underrated hills in racing. This is a steep climb.
It is, and that's what makes that exit out of the corner called the toe, which is actually, and then getting the toe from the car in front is very, very important. But yeah, that exit out the toe, definitely the most important corner on the whole circuit in these cars, because that, as I say, it's, again, terrible to say that a car with 425 horsepower is short on power, but relatively speaking, it is. So you really have to make sure you just get that toe just right and for the run down towards the heel.
Getting ready to get that run into turn 1. What's it going to be like into there? Will the drivers be able to keep it clean? Porsche pace car going to release James David, giving a little bit of space. Morales holding back, kind of caddy corner to the left rear of David. Maybe watching to see if he can get a better look at how he gets on the throttle. Pace car is in. David is off. Green flag is out. And unfortunately, Stogbauer has got a much better jump on Morales. He is already into second place as they head it down into the 90. He's also got the inside the desired line. A big dive by Prue trying to get into 4th past Avital. Behind them, it's looking pretty clean despite some 3 wide. I think we're good up into the S's.
Very impressive respect and skill and perception from all of our drivers there. It's very difficult to explain just how tight the entry is there coming down into turn 1, and you'll see as the race progresses that will be a very, very hot place for passes.
Up three, quite spread apart as they break for the inner loop for the first time. Bit of a side-by-side battle between Avital and Flores. Looks like Simon is going to take that fifth place right back. Everybody now going single file, except for a few stragglers through the inner loop. So already looks like people are trying to settle in.
Down we come then towards a corner called the Chute, which is a really interesting little braking zone. You're just turning and trail braking in. Remember, these GT4 cars do have anti-lock brake systems, so they've got that to help them out, as well as traction control. They can switch it off if they're feeling brave, but some drivers do, some drivers don't. As they head down to that ever-important corner of the toe, if you make a small mistake in there, you can really encourage the car behind you to hook in and make a move down at the heel, as we head down to now.
No surprise, quite a bit of a train because of the draft around here. We saw Avital poke his nose out one more time. He was looking on Sebastian Prue, then decided better of it. We're out of the boot, back onto the main circuit once more. Your leader is David. Stogbauer is in second, and Morales gets shuffled back to third on the first lap.
It's good for our drivers as well, getting a full, not always do the drivers get a full formation lap, and that full formation lap is really important for getting a bit of heat into the tyres and into the brakes for that dive down into turn one. As we go away, and David in the Porsche, he is really pulling away very nicely here, opening up a 0.7 of a second on the opening lap, using all of the room on the exit. Of course, on the exit of turn one, the 90, you have quite a lot of options on the exit. I quite like to get it slowed down and get it quite tight on the exit and not use too much of the curb on the outside. But what do you prefer, Joe?
I'm with you on that. I always feel like I'm doing it wrong. Swing it too wide. Meanwhile, P4 is still tight. Prue ahead of Avital. And despite the slipstream, doesn't seem like the 23 is brave enough to try and attack. Big close up from behind as Jorge Flores looked quite good in the inner loop. He falls back a little bit as they come through the carousel. We're on board with Avital, looking ahead of him, though, up at Prue.
Yeah, that inner loop, or the bus stop as it's often referred to as, is it's interesting you mentioned the incident points, Joe, the iRacing penalty system effectively that will hand out penalties to drivers or points towards a penalty for cutting the track. And at that bus stop, you're just threading the needle, and it's such a tricky entry and exit that it's very, very easy just to step over the line as one of the BMWs takes a look. And I guess Avital goes defensive. Oh, very close, but good respect from both drivers there again.
As Flores still side by side, but he's going to be on the outside coming through turn 9. So as they come back onto the main course, he has to give up the ghost. Great defense there from Avital. The 23, Fearson, trying to keep this fourth position, even though he doesn't seem to be closing in on our fifth position, even though he's not closing in on that group that is breaking away up at the front. Still one of our closest battles within the top 10 here. They come down to the 90 once more. Let's see what their preference is through the 90, Peter.
Let's have a look. We're going to see how it's done, because looking at the lap times, I can't get anywhere close to this, so maybe I should copy what they're doing and use all that curve on the exit. Just looking on the inside of that BMW M4, and this is the thing that's just fantastic about iRacing. They have such a high level that they set for themselves. You know, they only laser scan the cars to make sure they're absolutely identical to their real world variants. And of course, where iRacing is based on the northeast coast of the United States, they have Turner Motorsports, a BMW specialist, just down the road, who campaign this car in real life. But I always find both in the Porsche and the BMW, and I'm sure it's the same in other GT4 cars, is there's this very funny combination between a bog standard road car and a pure racer. So you've got like the standard gear shifter in both the Porsche and the BMW, but then you've got a carbon fiber steering wheel. It's quite a contradiction almost.
I kind of like the road car feel of the interior, if I'm honest, because it feels like club racing. It almost feels attainable as I sit in it in the sim. And boy, it seems like fourth place should be attainable to some of these drivers, because Prue's still leading a train of them, but no one's been able to swap around. Avital, Flores, Day, Palacio all still sit exactly where they were before.
And of course, you're right, Joe, the Porsche is not only attainable, but it is sustainable, because the Porsche 718 GT4 Cayman is the first ever production race car to feature body parts made of natural fiber composite material, which is very much kinder to our planet Earth.
I did not know that. You are chock full of facts. As we come onto the front stretch again, Prue is trying to get away as best he can. He's already lost 3.1 seconds up to the podium. At this point, he might want to work together with these drivers. So I wonder if it'd be in his best interest to let one of them around, or if he is actually the quickest of this group.
Yeah, this is where, as a racing driver, both in the virtual and real world, is probably the time where you've got to leave your ego in the pit garage, because you've really got to really decipher who is the fastest driver in this group and try and find out a way to get them at the front and tuck in behind them and stay with them, because you're absolutely spot on, Joe. For these 3 or 4 drivers here, if they've got aspirations about mounting a challenge to the win, well, their only hope now is to work together and, as you say, use that aerodynamic draft that makes such a difference. Of course, we see it all the time in NASCAR, of course, in stock car racing, but also where you see it a lot is in motorcycle racing as well.
It was a good run from Avital up through the S's, but it almost looked like he got balked by Prue and couldn't quite pick a side and carry that speed. So he's still stuck back there, riding right in the tire tracks. We're not missing anything on the cars ahead. You'll see flashes of them here and there on some of the wider cameras. It's still David up front, Stogbauer second, and Morales in third. The other question in that, because we've been talking about the slipstream in terms... Oh, and who is that? That's Morales. Just as I was speaking about nothing changing, a mistake from the number 22 sits him on the inside and stuck there in the heel of the boot, trying to get going straight. I think it looks like he's got that Porsche now pointed the right direction, but how much damage is on the car? Let's take a look at it.
So here we go then, coming into the heel, goes quite early actually, maybe just lifted off the throttle, maybe got a little bit of a bump, but Watkins Glen can be quite bumpy at times, and we talked about how that Cayman can get a little bit twitchy with its mid-engine layout, but Diego does very well. You'll see there, he's just in a really, really awkward spot, and any reversing he does do, he keeps it to as much of a minimum as he can, and he did well to avoid unnecessary contact there, and so did the drivers going past.
So Morales, because of how long it took him to try and make that K-turn, he's down in 25th. There you see the cars ahead of him. That's Padovani and La. So Prue is now promoted to third, and there's even more incentive for Avital to try and get around, but he makes a mistake into the inner loop, and it looks like Flores is going to be there to snatch it up. He gets into fourth. He's going to be able to pull away as Avital now tries to play defense on Day and Palacio.
Yeah, that could give just that little bit of a gap there for the 2 BMWs to just make a little bit of a breakaway as well. But yeah, that bus stop there, if it's all one line, and if you get one driver just make a small mistake, it can cause a bit of a domino effect as well. Funnily enough, going back to that IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge race that we had a couple of weeks ago here on GSRC, do you recall the incident between W Series driver Biecka Visser and YouTube sensation Jimmy Broadbent there in their BMWs, Joe?
Yeah, I forgot about that happening. That was quite the end to the race, as we now watch the drivers come back onto the main course, and Prue has dealt with Avital, but can he deal with Flores? Jorge has a lot of experience in this series. So does Sebastian Prue in the 79. In fact, I'm pretty certain that they've raced against each other in the GTE cars relatively frequently, and everybody just using every inch of the track. You saw dirt getting kicked up on the exit of the penultimate corner onto the main straight as we ride on board with Flores giving chase. He doesn't have the exit he needs down to the 90.
Yeah, really important just to get to break in a straight line there in the 90, get the car slowed down and get it pointing up to the straight, because that exit from that corner, the 90, is vital, because you are on full power all the way to the bus stop. I'd love to know what the percentage of full throttle is here in these cars at Watkins Glen, but it must be at least 70%. Which is not far off what it is at Le Mans. So it really shows you, this is a great example of the draft here, but Of course, just when the draft's taken effect, you've got to get on the brakes for the bus stop and try and not slam into the rear bumper of the car in front.
None of them still able to do anything with that slipstream, even though it was pulling them close. Avatal got quite tucked up behind Flores, who were riding on board with still. Oh, and a defensive move now down into the chute from Prue. So he's starting to feel a little bit vulnerable, and that actually puts Flores offline as Avatal almost gets his nose in. Things are kicking off here for third place.
They are. They're really, really spicy here between these drivers. But I have to say, Joe, you know, we see varying degrees of driving standards from absolutely superb to pure calamity. And here we're seeing really close racing with excellent respect between drivers, which we do see a lot with the PRL League.
Looks like they're going to stay in line despite things getting awful close there. Got a little bit of a side-by-side battle between Genest and File, and I think Mark File is going to take P13 from Arnaud in that 77 with a smooth move into the heel.
Yeah, there's a wide variety of paint schemes on show here across our BMWs, although there's 3 black and green ones going past just to make me sound really silly there as well. Now, 12 minutes of this race gone. Of course, the driver's starting on quite low fuel, and we saw that with our leader David doing an amazing 1 minute 56.7 in the early stages of the race, which you don't normally see in the early stages of the race, such fast lap times so close to qualifying pace. But that'll be because the car is running on relatively low fuel and therefore low weight. So it'll be interesting to see how the pit stops come about. Of course, here at Watkins Glen, relatively short pit lane as well. So we need to see how that shakes out. And if you're a driver that's stuck in a group where you're convinced that you're quicker, it's sometimes better to pit early and try and get out of that traffic.
And I think that's what P3 or P4 rather, I should say, Jorge Flores is doing. Because once again, he looked very, very close to Prue, and then he just kind of lifted out of it, like he wasn't all that interested. So I suspect there's some shenanigans going on to try and get a leapfrog going. We ride on board now with Sebastian looking over the rear wing. You can see how tightly packed the group is behind him. This time, it's going to be a look from Avatal, but he doesn't try and make a serious have at it.
Avatal and Flores just checked up ever so slightly there, and Avatal actually, I think, had to come out of it. I tell you what, Joe, if you're to make a move there, if we see a move there into the toe, well, that is a sign of a driver who's trying to slow the group up rather than work together. So it can just depend on what your level is. If you're a driver who's maybe further up the field than you're used to, it would be in your interest to try and slow things up a little bit and calm the pace down with a big move like that. However, if you're one of the faster drivers, you want to make sure that you're basically commanding the pace and trying to stretch it out a little bit more so you can get a cleaner run to open up your outright pace as they head round the final corner here. Really, really tricky cambered right-hander when you just got to get on the gas nice and early and open it up down the straight. It's a long drag down to turn 1 of the 90, but nobody thinking about a move just yet.
You have to wonder about those behind. Raymond Day, Julio Palacio have been at the back of this group this entire time, so they might have been saving the most among them, although they are stretching out a little bit here. And let's watch. Let's see if it's a repeat. Prue, he's looking to the outside, defensive move. Excuse me, Flores is looking to the outside. Prue, now he's actually going to have a go at it. Tries to put it to the inside, down to the inner loop. They make a little bit of contact. That's going to send Sebastian off. He's actually into the tires. Definite damage on the car. He takes a tow. The good news is they have a spare car, but ooh, this tow is going to be costly.
Yeah, that was one of those ones that was never going to fit. Prue maybe moved back to the ideal racing line that little bit earlier, so he put in his defensive line too early and then moved back across too early, and that gave the opportunity there for the other driver to get up the inside of him there. So a bit of a pity, and he's sitting in pit lane now. He'll be taking, as you can see, the damage on his car pretty significant, and as you said, Joe, they can take advantage of the iRacing fast repair or instant repair, where they've just got to get back to pit lane either via a tow or under their own power.
Got a battle for ninth position rather. That's Tremblay and Daly. We also had another wreck happen. I think that was Law that found himself with an incident in the chute. Looks like that battle's going to settle in favor of Tremblay, now up to ninth position. Trying to figure out what happened to Law here. Oh, he took a tow, so he must have had a significant lick.
Yeah, you know the damage is bad when you have to take a tow back to pit lane. Basically, where iRacing picks the car off the circuit and you basically takes a notional time penalty, and sometimes it can be up to a couple of minutes depending on where you are on circuit. So it's in a 45-minute race. It's pretty much it's a game over, isn't it? It's if you can limp the car back to pit lane without too much delay, you can get your fast repair and at least have a go at trying to salvage a couple of points.
That was Daly making a deep dive down into the 90, and Tremblay came out the worst of it. Just didn't get the exit off of the corner, so he lost 2 positions, not just to Daly, but that's Rodriguez in the Porsche, now split between the 2 BMWs. The 969 on the hunt for another one as he rides in the tire tracks of the number 6 car.
Yeah, as we just saw, you don't want to run too close to the car in front going through that bus stop, just in case there's a little checkup or whatever. Also, although these cars aren't massively dependent on the aerodynamics, they make most of their grip mechanically through the tires and suspension, etc. But you can still get a little bit of aero wash, it's called. It basically where the front downforce of the car is disturbed by the air from the car in front. We hear a lot about that in Formula One, of course. But the last place where you want a bit of aero wash is coming through the bus stop.
Had a bit of an off for Improta. Don't need to go to the replay. It was in the inner loop in a single car incident with slight contact to the wall. I think he should be able to continue on. Back in third place. We've left it for a little bit, but it's still going on. Flores ahead of Avital now instead of Prue up at the front with his damage and having to take a tow. At the back of this trio, it is Raymond Day. They're dropping Julio Palacio in the 194. It seems like he's struggling to try and keep pace with this group.
Yeah, Avital using... Oh, I think there might have been a little bit of contact there, but there's a very good example of differing ways that you can take turn 1, the 90. It looked like Avital was going for the higher corner speed and run wide, whereas Flores was going for the slower, kind of basically Ving off the corner, slowing it in and then fast out again. But looks like they've got away relatively cleanly. It might have been a little rub there, Joe.
Let's hope that it doesn't affect his straight line speed if he did make contact. At least he's still got the tow from the car ahead. Speaking of which, it seems Palacio made good use of it that time by, because he caught up some of the gap that he lost. This is a good run here coming down into the chute, but still Avital is stuck behind. So Flores retains P3. All this battling, though, is certainly not helping them. It is 8.2 seconds just up to Stogbauer in second place. It's a whole 13.5 seconds to our leader, James David, who's just been having his own way with this race.
Yep, I think they're now in the... Yeah, this is basically their battle for the last place on the podium, but an absolutely extraordinary drive so far from James David. Out for a nice little Monday evening stroll around Watkins Glen in his Porsche Cayman GT4. But yeah, back to this battle for third. It's going to be pretty fierce. And we saw Avital there coming out of the chute, really using the benefit of that typical Porsche corner traction, basically. When you get on the power... There's nothing like a Porsche when you put the power down and it squats and goes, and of course even more so in the 911 with the engine even further back in the rear of the car.
Got a car pitting in front of them, and I think that's a lapped machine. That's Aaron Law. Yeah, he's coming back. It looks like for a little bit more work. And we should point out that Avital does have reason to try and get past this number 29 because he wants to try and get up to Stogbauer, who leads him in the points right now. Avital sits in third. Stogbauer is at the top of the charts. He's got to get ahead of him if he wants to make inroads, and this is a decent run up the S's. He's going to look to the outside. Is it going to be an actual attack, or is he going to back out of it? Holding in the middle of the road, Flores deeper on the brakes. Looks like Avital is just going to let him have it for the time being.
Flores will be lucky not to get a slowdown penalty there. He had one wheel on the grass there on the inside of the corner, so that'd be interesting to follow there. But yes, Flores also not disturbed by his previous incident a couple of laps ago. And was, as you say, very deep and very brave on the brakes, and he kind of had to be to keep Avital behind him. And Avital looking now, you can just tell. I love this, Joe, when you can see the body language of a car. You can just see what the driver's thinking. You see him adjusting his line more often, trying to fill the mirrors of that BMW M4 and saying, I'm here. You might have not, I mean, his car is certainly bright enough to be noticed. So, so as we come down into the hill, he's just trying to set up a move, but he's probably beginning to get that little bit impatient, perhaps. So this could ignite quite soon.
And let's jump back to a driver that's been trying to climb his way forward as well. The 22 of Morales. He's in 15th, and he's working on Barrett, rather. He's going to be able to get by him down in the heel of the boot. That's one more position. Remember, he was down in 25th before. So a nice job by Diego to try and come back for what I'm assuming is at least the top 10 on the cards. I don't know if he can get all the way to the top 5.
Yeah, and that's the thing in a long season, a long championship, of course, that looks on the face of it pretty dire. Started in 2nd and now 14th, and at one point, as you say, back in 25th. But over a season, it's likely that, especially in a field as closely packed as this with so many cars, you are going to I think everybody's going to have a race where there's a little incident or what have you, whether it's your fault or not. So it's more how you react to that and how you can easily get over frustrated and overdrive the car, and there's nothing worse for your performance than overdriving these GT4s. So he's doing really, really well to cut his way back up the field as we see a good battle here onto the back straight.
Ooh, almost getting squeezed off. That's File to the outside, and Tremblay just barely giving him a car's width in the end, sending it, hoping to try and take a spot himself. Richards, unfortunately, gets into File. They both come out the other side, but not without a little bit of contact.
Car on the board then, 49 car. Christopher Richards is, a little bit of friendly fire there, Joe, though they look very similar colour schemes. Are they in the same team?
If they are, I think it's sister teams. But Richards, yeah, I think you're right. It looks like they are on the same Red Bull. And Richards did a good job of not wrecking his teammate then, and File did a good job not wrecking it. Meanwhile, Flores finally overtaken by Avital and already under attack from Raymond Day around the outside of turn 9. Day doesn't quite have it, so Flores only lose 1.
And look at Avital already. He knows that once he's got past, he's got to put the pedal to the metal and really try and break away and get into a safe spot. Of course, we can't be all that far away from pit stops. We've been on the go for 25 laps. But interestingly, we were talking with our colleague Jeff McConey, who was off to go and run a virtual IMSA race, and he was asking us about pit strategy. And fun enough, those races are 45 minutes as well. And it'd be interesting to see the drivers. Some drivers will split the race right down the middle, as we've seen a few cars coming into pit lane. Basically, it's kind of the simplest way. Just pit at halfway, fuel for half, and that'll do. But some drivers will fill the tank up as high as they can and run as late as they can, depending on the outcome of the race. So let's see what Avital does, but he's desperately trying to break the toe of Flores in the BMW.
That was Matt Odell, who was a lap down. He has already taken his pit stop, letting all 4 of our leaders by. And interesting to note, that pass that happened between Avital and Flores was because he finally shook a mistake out of Jorge. The 29 just outbraked himself into the heel of the boot, and Avital slipped on through. I think he does have better pace, because even with the slipstream, he's been able to run away from that 29 BMW.
Yes, his best lap of the race is about 2 seconds fast. Sorry, 0.2 seconds faster than Flores. So relatively close, but certainly quicker nonetheless. And I have to say, yeah, that this coming down here into the heel, you're really breaking downhill. off camber ever so slightly on the entry, and then it cambers up again. I have to say, if I had $1 for every time I've done that and outbrake myself into there, I think I could maybe buy one of these GT4 cars.
My problem is always hitting that curb to the inside that does not like me. As we watch Avital continue to try to stretch away. David is still our leader, and it's about 7.7 seconds between himself and Stogbauer. Neither has pitted. Our highest pitter for the time being is the number 49 and 17th. That's Christopher Richards. Oh, and he might have a challenge because Ted Lowendick is now in from 7th. So is Kenny Rodriguez. So it's starting to kick off for some of our front runners.
Yeah, the pace of the top two is in another county. I mean, David and Stogbauer are the only drivers anywhere near the 1 minute 57 barrier, both with their fastest laps well underneath that barrier. And you can really tell it on the timesheets there. Is the 969 car. That is Kenny Rodriguez, outruns his pit box ever so slightly. And the man from Pennsylvania.
The stop was decent, but let's see what his cone-to-cone is like. Actually, it was very good. Well, that's bizarre. Lowendick must have been really timid into his box or into the lane, because it was similar times between them. Still, Ted Lowendick comes out first of the drivers who have pitted. He comes back in 12th position. We're starting to get to that end of that window. We probably won't see the leaders in until the tanks are dry. We take a glance at 4th place. Flores definitely has lost the fight with Simon Avital, and now he has to play rear guard because it's Raymond Day who wants to be the next in line to overtake him.
Yep, and Raymond Day in the Porsche as well. I have to say, Joe, and iRacing have done a superb job to balance the performance between these cars, the Porsche Cayman and the BMW M4. They're and then in the real world, they're very different cars, of course, but you know, their pinpoint accuracy from the laser scanning and to have the field here so evenly matched. We've got a very even spread of BMWs and Porsches. It's absolutely fantastic and just shows you how good the iRacing team are at their job.
And Day comes in along with Stogbauer ahead of him. So 2nd place driver now pits. Anybody else behind them? I see at least one making motion. That's Jean-Marc Tremblay. There's Stogbauer waiting for his fuel. And wow, he was a couple seconds longer than most everybody else except for maybe 1 or 2 cars. So I'm not sure what happened there.
That could maybe affect Stogbauer there. It looked like maybe he could be that he maybe started the race on quite low fuel, possibly, and maybe that would maybe allude to why he was so quick in the early stages of the race, and now he's actually having to take more fuel than the others potentially, Joe.
He does come out the highest pitter. Raymond Day returns in 8th behind Tim. You got Ted Lowendick, who has already taken his stop before them. So where is David? David's coming around towards pit lane soon. That car behind him, that is Navarra. That's not for position. That's a lap down machine. Avital right now is riding in 2nd, but he's 16 seconds behind, so that is highly unlikely that it will be a battle for position. And through the penultimate turn, we'll know it pretty early because they got to stay tight in if they want to pit. Yep, that looks like a pit indication to me.
Certainly is. Let's see. And he actually accelerates towards the line and then hard back on the brakes again and engages the pit limiter. That's the sign of a fast driver who uses every last 1/10 of a second coming into pit lane. Is that long drag? It just feels like you're going on forever in this pit lane as well. So as David comes in to take a little splash of fuel and he'll be back on his way shortly.
Avital is in, Flores pits. This is probably the end of the line, I'd say. I think everybody has to come in for fuel. And David, is done and out. 9.3 seconds versus Stogbauer to 11.2. So that gap probably going to be a significant chunk larger as it settles in, waiting for it to give us the accurate time here. And now that they've both crossed the same timing loop, it looks like about 11 seconds difference between them. Stogbauer gaining a little bit back here, so back up to 10.5.
Yeah, there's about 2 seconds difference in the lane in the favour of David. So he's been the fastest on track and the fastest in pit lane as well. It's been a dominant performance round here today at Watkins Glen. As we see a little BMW battle there, obviously not for position as the other car moves out the way. So we're looking at the 327 of Michael Stogbauer in his BMW M4 using all the exit room there, coming out the outer loop down towards the chute.
Now that pit stop sequence really spread everybody apart. And is that, 327 there trying to warm his tires. So Stogbauer not terribly happy with the tires having cooled down in that stop, it seems.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's certainly the comments about the road car, the BMW M4, a lot of it relating to the power delivery of this engine. Obviously, it's a 3-litre straight 6, which is very typical for BMW. They kind of trust that layout very well, but 2 massive twin turbos. And here in Scotland, I actually do know a guy who has one of the BMW M4s, and he says when the tyres are cold, you want to be need to have your pink fluffy slippers on, because if you just ask for that little bit too much power, it will rip your head off. So, of course, because it's so closely related to the GT4 race car, it won't be all that different. So I can imagine this car, when the tyres are stone cold, even with the traction control, it will get pretty jazzy. As you'll see him, you're wondering why on earth is he weaving all over the road there? That's to get more heat and pressure into his tyres.
Battle happening behind them in 10th place. Mark Feil defending against Jean-Marc Tremblay. And Feil's actually had a decent run today. He started in 14th, and it looks like he's going to be scored in 10th this time by. Something happened to Danny Duchesne, though. I see he has taken a tow and has now actually exited the race. He's done for the day, so not sure what happened to the 27. We'll try and investigate that later as this battle keeps going. Tremblay with a bad exit off the 90 allows Christopher Richards a whiff of his slipstream.
They come through that. It might look relatively simple and straightforward, the S's there coming out of 19 towards the S's. But although it's flat, you can't switch your brain off there, because the car, especially on cold tyres, can always get that little bit loose. And also, we have seen when drivers have tried to go too wide through there, it usually ends up in a bit of a plane crash. And we saw in last year's IMSA 6 Hours of the Glen race in the real world, we saw one of the Corvettes trying to go around the outside there, and it ended up in one big heck of a pileup.
It's so narrow. It always reminds me of a street course driving through that portion of the track. Down into the toe of the boot, Richards, who we ride on board with, looking over the dash, closes in on the back of Tremblay, but isn't within striking distance quite yet. He's once again going to pull the slipstream. They approach the heel of the boot. Slight defense from the 927, but he comes back to the racing line when he sees that he is safe.
Yeah, there's actually those. Obviously, it's the same car, but I would have thought actually, Joe, we would have been seeing a little bit of extra movement on the draft. Sometimes it maybe just depend how the drivers have got their cars set up and got how they've how they're running as well with the fuel load. As we come down to the final corner, we've got a train of BMWs here with a Porsche out front, and David just continuing to grow his lead.
So, with 10 minutes left to go, it is time to do or die. If you want positions, you got to start attacking. You got to find that pace. And once again, Tremblay just doesn't seem to like the exit of that first turn. Richards is close. Can he time it right, though? He's getting the slipstream. Watching from the gearbox of Jean-Marc Tremblay. Pulls him in a little bit more. It's now less than a car length between them. 49. Thinks about it. He shows his nose, but he's not gutsy enough, and he's going to come back to the racing line into the inner loop.
Yeah, you're always thinking they're going into the bus stop when you've got a car behind you. You think, come on, have you got the guts? Come on, and often they do. Often they do, and it can sometimes end up in calamity. Now, for some of our viewers, if you're a fan of NASCAR, you might notice on the front of the BMW there's a little kind of red tag. It almost looks like the little bits of tape that you see the NASCAR Cup teams take on and off the cars to adjust its aerodynamics and cooling and such. But on these cars, it's slightly different. That little red tow hook there, well, it's the sort of thing that is just underneath the right-hand headlight, or left-hand as we look at it. That is actually a little tow hook, and that's the thing you never want to use. If you end up in the gravel in one of these in real world, that's so that you can get basically towed back onto dry land. So if you're a NASCAR fan, it's not what you might think it is, but it's there in the event of emergencies.
Yeah, I'm curious what it'll be like the day that iRacing implements getting stuck in those sand traps. It'll either be very frustrating or exciting, I'm sure, from our view, because certain drivers will make mistakes that they won't be able to come back from as easily. These three not making nearly enough mistakes to stick with it, because we got a much better battle here with Flores and Day, and this is for fourth place, just outside the podium. Day is the one you see, the Porsche up in front, leading Jorge Flores in his BMW, and he's going to take a defensive line up to the inner loop, and now he comes back to the racing line.
Yeah, Flores is certainly not put off by his previous incidents there. He was really, really late on the brakes there, but giving a little bit of room to Day in his little Porsche there. As they head down towards the chute. Not normally a overtaking manoeuvre, but oh goodness me, that was close there on the brakes, and that's cost Flores for sure there, and that's allowed Day to get the power down in his Porsche as we head down to the toe of the boot.
Now that little speck that we see up there, that is Simon Avital, and a driver that's probably thinking woulda, coulda, shoulda is that number 23, because Peter, it's only just under 4 seconds between himself and Stogbauer. If he hadn't have been held up, considering how much he has left Day and Flores behind right now, I wonder if he could have been in second place right now.
Possibly, certainly with Stogbauer's lengthy time in pit lane, and I could imagine that time for Michael Stogbauer was due to having to take more fuel and therefore running the car on low fuel and lighter early on in the race. But looking at the outright best lap time, Stogbauer's got a 1 minute 56.8 and Avital's a 1 minute 57.5. However, I suspect that Stogbauer might have got that time while just hanging on to the back of David in the early stages of the race, perhaps. But yes, you're right. I think Avital does have the pace, or did have the pace to be in second position.
A little bit behind them, sixth place between Lowendick and Palacio is looking like it might swap around. We've got 6 minutes left to go. It's really coming down to the wire now, because these laps take 2 minutes, more than 2 minutes in some cases, just to complete. And this is a great run from Palacio, the 194, holding him to the inside. Lowendick now starts to drift back across the track as he gets on the binders and does stay ahead, so Julio will have to try again later.
Yeah, well defended there as well. I mean, as I say, you've got to be brave if you want to be pulling a move at the bus stop. And also, I think that this is where league racing is so important, because if you're used to driving with the same guys every week, you'll know who the really safe drivers are, you know who the fast drivers are, and you know who the people you maybe want to give a couple of extra meters to. And when all of that goes through your head, you're the supercomputer of a racing driver's brain. When you're lining up that move into a section like that at the bus stop, you're calculating all that in a split second, whether you make a move or not. And of course, you're likely to plan it all the way down the straight as well. But you've got to be sure that the driver in front of you is not going to turn in. And that's, I suppose, something you can never guarantee.
Yeah, it takes trust in your competitor for sure. As we have Day on the screen, who's been trusting Flores. Of course, these two fighting for fourth position rather. Before we were watching Ted Lowendick, worth pointing out, Ted started in 13th and is riding in 6th right now.
Very impressive move up the the field. Yeah, 1 minute 57.6. So yeah, that's a fast lap. That's much faster than his the folks in front of him as well. So he's made a really, really good move up the field from 13th position as they head down into the chute. I have to say, I'm not sure about the yellow wheels, but I do like the purple. The purple and the silver is very cool. But yellow, or yeah, are they Grello wheels maybe?
Is that green and yellow together?
It is, yes. That's the Manti. In fact, that's a Porsche thing, actually. The green and yellow, known as Grello, the Manti Racing, who, of course, very, very successful racing team with Porsche.
Defensive line from Lowendick down into the inner loop. That's James Nunn. That's lap traffic, so they're going to want him to leap out of the way here pretty quickly. In fact, nicely done there. Just staying way out on the outside of the carousel. Lets them both through. So this battle might just go down to the wire the way it's looking.
It seems to me, Joe, in these cars that you've got to be so precise, and to really do the lap time to run at the front, you've got to be so precise and so accurate that putting any kind of move on the drivers around you is really, really difficult. And any move you do make, you've really got to be pretty gutsy to pull it off.
And they're both BMW, same make, so they're on pretty even playing field. Haven't really talked about setup a whole lot today. Really, the talking point has mainly been down to the differences between the cars. Two very different lines, though, between the two of them around turn 9. So if not different setups, different driving styles, at least through there. 2.5 minutes to go, and I think we'll get the white flag next time for James David.
Yeah, it will be, and of course, for the BMW drivers, they will have only had their new toy to play with for a couple of weeks since the last build. But the Porsche has been on since about the beginning of the year, and just that extra time can really make a difference. And of course, tomorrow night we've got the Racing Edge series back here at Watkins Glen, and the GT4 Cayman is running there as well. And I have to be honest, I'll tell the truth, I've actually had a go on the Racing Edge setup, and it is very, very nice, and it's got me to fall back in love with the Cayman again.
Meanwhile, let's jump back to 12th, 11th, really, because Diego Morales is side by side coming up the hill. This is the first time in a while we've seen two drivers going wheel to wheel through the S's section, and Richards, I don't think, has enough. The charging Diego Morales now comes within one car of reaching the top 10.
He's really cut through the field very, very well after his little mistake early on in the race, as he makes that move stick through the bus stop and heads on to find his next victim. But looks like that might be it with the white flag coming out.
Yeah, that'll be a huge ask for him to try and close down 2 seconds on a car ahead in one lap. Not impossible, mind you, but he'll have to be hustling and make a very aggressive move. Our leader is just now coming out of the final turn. James David takes the white flag, telling him 1 to go with a 14.8 second lead over Michael Stogbauer. This is going to be an absolute romp if he brings it home.
Well, just a fair warning, Diego Morales, cover your ears before I say this. He has got the second fastest lap of the race and only 0.05 of a second slower than James David, our runaway race leader. So perhaps a story of what could have been.
Yeah, he started that one on the front row even, as we watch James David come down to the inner loop. The battle's still on for both 4th place and 6th place, by the way. Flores chasing Day, with Palacio chasing Lowendick. This is Flores that we're watching in the BMW, chasing the Porsche of Day. Day holds him down low. Is he going to come back to the racing line? Now he does. He feels safe enough, and even though it's very good on the brakes for Flores, it's not good enough. Almost a tap to the behind of that Porsche Cayman.
Yeah, that is on the borderline of driving standards there from Day, because he had already made his one move on the straight in good driving etiquette, and in a lot of cases it's written into the rule book in a lot of racing series that you're allowed one movement on the going down the straight, and he had two there. But and of course coming into the bus stop there, yeah, that's not where you want to be moving across on somebody.
Forward with Palacio, also getting close to the car ahead. As much as we want to watch this, we've got 2 corners left to go for James David. So he didn't get a lot of screen time. He didn't have a lot of battles today. But I'm sure he's happy for a quiet win himself as he takes points today to try and get back into this fight. James David wins here at Watkins Glen.
Flawless performance from the Canadian driver there. It is Michael Stogbauer. Very good performance from him. The number 327 BMW. So it's Porsche followed by BMW. So Stuttgart, or Weissach, takes the honours today from the Munich mark of BMW, with another Porsche of Simon Avital coming in third.
Day is going to be able to take it home ahead of Flores, and Lowendick just barely going to beat Palacio at the line by about a tenth between them. In fact, Byron Daly had caught up to them as well, and that was almost a 3-car battle. Very close between Morales and Richards. No, excuse me, File, rather. Timing and scoring, trying to keep up with things shifting around here at the end. Looks like Brian Hotham, in 17th, is going to finish ahead of Margula in the 66. But that's it for our close battles here at the end of the race. We had 26 cars, believe it or not, finish on the lead lap. A fair few retirements along the way, though. It was not a completely clean race. We're going to take it to break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. If you stick around, on screen you'll see all the upcoming races here on GSRC. Welcome back to Watkins Glen International Round 2 here in the PRL GT4 Clubsport Series. Saw James David return with his crown and his first victory of the season. It was miles ahead of Michael Stogbauer, who was a 17-second gap behind in second place. Some of that due to a slow pit stop that we're still not sure what exactly caused it. Hopefully, we'll get to talk to him and find out. Simon Avital managed to climb up into third, but maybe could have had a little bit more if he had pushed harder early in the race and maybe could have taken second from Michael. We'll never know, I guess. Raymond Day finished P4 with Jorge Flores in fifth, just behind him at the line. Ted Lowendick in a close fight, finishing sixth ahead of Palacio in P7. Byron Daly going from 19th to 8th. Didn't get to cover his climb very well, but that deserves a clap as Kenny Rodriguez finishes in ninth. Diego Morales, unfortunately, settling for 10th place in the end after starting in second.
11th was the 77 of Mark File, followed behind in 12th with the number 49 of Christopher Richards. 13th was the 927 of Jean-Marc Tremblay. 14th was the 009 of David Cristelli. 15th was the 69 of Jefferson Padovani. 16th was the number 30 of Brett Barrett. 17th, Brian Hotham. 18th, Peter Margula. 19th, Rodrigo Improta. And 20th, Philippe Manan.
Frank Krumans, who was up very late out in the Benelux Club, managed to finish about halfway up the field in 21st. Arnaud Genest finishing 22nd. Then you got Karsten Quint, P23, Spencer Simkovich, 24th, and John Cochran gets the quarter century mark there in 25th. You got Brian Matthews, the last car on the lead lap in 26th. Everybody else from there on either finished a lap down or had some problems and DNF'd for today. We've got our winner ready to talk to us, James David, but not sure how much there will be to talk about. James, you got out to the front at the start of this race and nobody could touch you the whole way through. Oh, we think we got James here. We heard a bit of a mic. James, you got a copy?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. There we go. I was saying that it seemed like you didn't have too much going on, at least from our perspective. I mean, what was it like out there up front? You looked pretty calm and collected the whole way.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get an advance like that. Last week was a nightmare for me. So tonight I practiced more this week. So when I see the gap that I was gaining, at first I was thinking probably the other guy just tried to manage the new tire. That is pretty difficult to he heats up very quickly. So the first 10 lap, I was thinking probably the other guy behind me was it was a strategy, but I saw the gap that was I was comfortable. Uh, 15 lap, it was coming to a good grip, but the 10 to 15 was difficult. But yeah, that was a good race.
How did you feel about the balance of performance between the BMW and the Porsche today? Because this is a bit of a distinct track with it having long straights and lots of very fast corners. But I'm noticing
Yeah.
that the Porsche has 3 out of the top 4. Was there an advantage in the Porsche today?
I try a couple of official race this week. I think the Porsche has an advantage here, but I didn't do a lot of official race, so I cannot speak a lot about how the BOP is between the two cars. But tonight I seems to have an advantage with the Porsche.
Well, regardless, it seems like it went very, very well for you. You've already got the championship from last season. Now that you've got a win on the board, is that the goal this season? Take another crown?
Yeah, for sure, it's the goal, but I just wish to have good battle. I'm not the kind of guy that want an easy championship, so I just hope that tonight was a unique night, and the other guy will be able to have great battle next week, next race. I don't want to win like 3 in a row easily. I just want good racing and good battle. So I just wish, yeah, probably to win this season, but to have great battle all season long.
True racer at heart. That was James David. Thanks for coming and talk to us, and congratulations on the win.
Thanks to you and everyone in the sponsor for the season. Thank you.
James David, P1, as we've got second place finisher Michael Stogbauer talking to Peter Mackay.
Michael Stogbauer, second place today here at Watkins Glen. Tell us how that race went for you.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, that was a pretty fun race. It was definitely quite challenging, especially at the start, and over the course of the race, managing these tires has been a bit of a pain.
See, and of course you've got a new toy there to play with the new to iRacing BMW M4 GT4. Tell us a little bit about the car and how it's different from the Cayman, which was the sole car in the GT4 class prior to a couple of weeks ago.
You know, I got to say, having done a lot of the Cayman and then coming to the BMW as we got this new tire, both cars have been pretty phenomenal. But the BMW has definitely been suffering with some tire drop off. I'd say it's more to do with the fact that just the weight distribution between the two cars, the BMWs just going to struggle more with understeer, or the Porsche, if you put a good driver in the seat, they can do well to manage the oversteer you get from the rear wheels heating.
I see. And of course, the engines that power these two cars are very different as well, because the BMW is six-cylinder, twin turbocharged motor. Is the power delivery much different with the turbochargers in the BMW?
It definitely feels quite powerful, but I think between the two in a straight line, the BMW would come out ahead. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the car. I would like to see maybe some way in the future we can figure out a setup or something that can help deal with the front end tires.
I see. And the pit stop. We want to ask about the pit stop. It was a little bit longer in the lane than some of the other drivers. Did you have to take more fuel, or was there a particular reason for that?
I knew I wasn't going to catch P1 because at that point, at the halfway point, I saw the gap extending and I was not able to close it. So at that point, I just decided that I'd take just as much, or not as much fuel as I could, but a safe amount of fuel to be sure I'd cross the line.
The belt and braces approach always works well. Michael, thanks for coming up to chat to us in the booth here. Before you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to here on the Global SimRacing Channel?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to the guys over at Speedworks and Racing Sim Tools for getting me in a good car this season. I'd also like to shout out the guys over at the Sim Racing Discord, except Pete. And yeah, that was an awesome race.
Well, thanks very much for coming to chat to us, and looking forward to seeing you up here again very soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
I don't know who Pete is, but he got some.
I hope he's not meaning me.
Yeah, he saw some serious shade thrown right there. Meanwhile, we've got third place finisher Simon Avital ready to talk to us. And Simon, let's talk about one of the major things that we noticed during this race, which is it looked like you were a little bit stuck back there in that group. And after the pit stops, you weren't too far behind Michael Stogbauer. Do you think P2 was on the cards if you had managed to overtake those drivers sooner?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a possibility. Unfortunately, yeah, I got stuck. I think it was Sebastian that got. I honestly thought he was going to tuck up behind me on sort of at the start there, and so it was my bad call there. Let him sort of take it. He got me napping there, and so that helped me up. Made a little bit of a mistake. Jorge got past me, and I've done a lot of racing. I've seen a lot of Jorge around over the last couple of years, so I knew I didn't want to trifle with him. And that BMW is pretty quick in a straight line. So yeah, I definitely think had I not made that little error, it's sort of in racecraft right at the beginning, I might have had some pace on Michael. I've done a couple of races with him and officials as well. Unfortunately, didn't get as much practice this week due to Le Mans, which paid off in that front, considering we got P2 on that. But yeah, unfortunately, lagged a little bit here today.
Now, even though the temperatures did slowly go down, they were always in the hundreds during this race. What did the car feel like out there? Was it pretty slippery?
Honestly, it felt a lot better than in practice. Again, I haven't done a ton of races this week because I was just practicing a lot more, more so for Le Mans. So honestly, I mean, it didn't seem so bad, and certainly not as bad as the BMW seemed to be. Like it just seemed I was gaining a lot of pace in the corners, which seems to be obviously the strength of the BMW. Seems to be a little bit quicker in a straight line. It feels like a rocket in a straight line, actually, considering even getting an amazing run up. I forget, like basically that like the whatever it's called, the sort of the S's going up into the big front straight. Getting a great run there doesn't seem to do anything for a draft of the GT4 BMW. So yeah, it just seems like a rocket in a straight line. But in the curves, it seems like it's struggling quite a bit.
I'm curious to find out how Silverstone will go, because that is a track known for some very long straights. How do you feel about next round? Do you think you can make some inroads on Stocgbauer in the points?
I hope so, but honestly, I'm having so much fun in this class and this series. Frankly, I love PRL. It's my second season with these gentlemen, and it's a fantastic experience. Really, really fun. Just a lot more fun than another official race. To be honest, this is great, and so I really appreciate your guys' broadcast. All of the all of the work that goes into maintaining this. It's a tremendous amount of work. So really appreciate you guys doing what you do, and yeah, hopefully keep putting on some good battles for the rest of this season.
We hope so too, because we certainly enjoyed this one. Congratulations on a podium, Simon, and hopefully we'll talk to you in a couple weeks' time.
Thanks, guys. Be great.
Simon Avital, third place here in round 2 of the PRL GT4 Clubsport Series, but it's time for us to close out with a few thank yous to our sponsors, of course, starting out with NinjaTrader. If you want to find out how to get involved with them, check them out at NinjaTrader.com. And also, today's broadcast was brought to you by SimRacing Canada. You can find their equipment at SimRacingCanada.com. And of course, the PRL series this season are brought to you by the ButtKicker. They can be found at thebuttkicker.com for all of their sim rig gear. And a big thank you goes to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. We've got them listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Peter, Sean, Dougie, and of course, everybody else behind the scenes at GSRC that helps make these things happen. But if you'd like to find out more, including our upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Also, check out our social media. Our Twitter is at GSR Channel, Facebook is Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram is GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support us, we've got a merchandise store at gsrc.storeenvy.com. And there you can see a link is in the description below. Next race is going to be at Mosport that we're covering. As we mentioned, in a week's time, they are going to Silverstone. Sadly, we won't be able to cover that race. But Tuesday, July 6th, if you tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern, you'll be catching us once again. We have upcoming races for another series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.